what we find 20 years back in all cinemas, that you have to wear a dhoti and politicians a dress, which I am not wearing. In that sense, maybe I am uncommon. But whatever way we say, whatever definition we use about the common man, I want to put this point that every common man has two characteristics. On one hand, that person is a producer, contributes something to the generation of output or services. At the same time, that person is a consumer, consumes goods and services. Apparently, at some point of time, they are pitted against each other. In the when I feel myself as a producer, I want to maximize something, my gain, maybe my profit, whatever be that. And as a consumer, I want to maximize my utility from consuming the goods and services. So they may not go hand in hand. And I want to put it this way: every common man has two kinds of characteristics. They sometimes are contradictory to each other. So we have to keep that in mind when we say how economic policies are going to affect the common man in that way. Now let me just go to some problems which we face, and I would say every common individual for that matter, and I want to leave aside the word common from now on. You just put it fill in the blanks how you define the common man. One issue which is bothering us, sometimes it comes out in the newspapers. Let me speak some of these issues, sir, and then I will go to...
Professor, as much as you want.
No,
seriously.
Everybody will get bored if I speak too much.
No, I'm just saying please.
Sure. Thank you. Let me, it's kind of sometimes very puzzling for people like us who have studied economics, and I teach economics, and as a result, kinds of puzzles which we face but we don't solve. One puzzle, in fact, one certain things which has come up time and again, and many chambers, not the Bengal chambers alone, have made representations to the government of India, and then the government of India, in the sense Ministry of Finance, has this tussle with the Reserve Bank about the rate of interest. As a consumer, we want low rate. House, cars, durables, EMIs will be all less if the rate of interest is low. As producer also, low rate of interest apparently helps, because if you look at the capital structure, rate of interest has a role to play. Doesn't matter what leveraging you produce, rate of interest is an index. Now, why the rate of interest is not going down? Look at the problem. India right now saves something like 30% of their GDP, one of the lowest among, if you start from the East Asia and gradually move from Japan, Korea, then China, then Singapore, then Malaysia, Indonesia. I don't consider Myanmar yet because it's a new entrant. And then if you look at, step into the South Asia, and India being the biggest player, one of the lowest savings ratio. The government claims 30%, the IMF claims 28%. I don't know which one is true. One of the lowest. With this much of savings, you cannot expect a huge or high rate of capital formation. So what happens? We need capital. It doesn't matter which way you go, which industry we talk about. The capital has to be formed. And the main source is, I would say, the most reliable source of this capital formation is domestic savings. With 28 to 30% of savings, it has come down from a high of 36% in 2011. It's come down to this level now, 30%. It's not a good sign at all. So where from the capital will come? Where from the source, the financing will come? Foreign sources. The foreign or the person staying abroad, doesn't matter which kind of person, non-resident Indians, completely foreigners, we have to grab their savings in order to boost up our investment. In order to grab their savings, our rate of interest, which is whatever the rate of interest, you can take the treasury bill or whatever. Finally, if the rate of interest is higher, the risk-weighted rate of interest, so the rate of interest has to be quite a good deal higher, because we have the risk which is higher than some of the risk which you attach in the European and American markets. That rate of interest, if that is not high, the foreign investment will not come. I'm not distinguishing in portfolio and direct, it's just a nomenclature. So we need them. And the Reserve Bank is constrained to reduce that rate of interest, because if they reduce it, we are in trouble. So it's kind of a Hobsons choice. What would you do if you want to satisfy the producers, the consumers? Your rate of interest, lower that. If you lower that, the foreign savings will not come. If the foreign savings does not come, with a continuously falling savings rate, where do we go? Again, the common individual, where that individual stands. You can see the fight among the ministry and Reserve Bank governors coming and going. That doesn't solve the problem. It's a very important issue which we have to really talk about. Another issue which has come up, very important issue, employment in the agricultural session and otherwise also. You know, the major problem which is coming nowadays, if you start from the agriculture, which has captured the majority of our population, the mechanization is going on. Even if you look at the Bengals, West Bengal's agriculture, you see the amount of tractors, amount of threshers and all these plowing machines, they were not there. So it's displacing labor. All over the world this is a problem. India cannot be an exception. So it's a real huge task for the employment to be created. A person's welfare depends, necessary condition is to have a job. Then comes the sufficient conditions. You must have sufficient good pricing of goods and services. But that's the secondary. You have to have a stable job. And that's a big issue. With increasing mechanization in the society, globally, where do we stand? There comes the question of MSME. We talk so much about medium and small scale industries. If you look at that, a standalone sector doesn't exist nowadays. In fact, the Southeast Asia has done miracle with MSME, because they have very clearly, with the government support, has gone into the global value chain. India, there is always constant tussle that should we go to a domestic value chain or a global value chain. We have a very big market. We have a domestic value chain as well. We can combine any kind of value chain. But where is the government's conscious effort to encourage the value chain? Tell me the tax policy. We give tax holidays to put our industries in backward districts, but does it create value chain? Where exactly in our tax policies over the last few years the value chain is encouraged in that? I don't find it. But that's one of the things by which MSME can create jobs, because then it could sustain itself. Coming to another thing which affects our common man, and this is a policy which really matters, is the rent seeking. India is a rent seeking society, whether we like it or not. Anne Kruger coined it long time back, but then Bhagavati came in. Everybody supports that rent seeking is an important issue. What is rent seeking? Economic theory says I should be paid according to my marginal product. What I contribute to the production in the margin, I should get that. People get more or less depending on the type of market. But here in India, the common trend, whoever has some power wants to get 5 times, 10 times what his marginal product is, and that's rent. That's not your productivity, that's rent. And it so happened that whenever a new government comes, the common persons, if you talk about that, is not really what is happening in the cyber world, or what is happening about the 2G scam, or what is happening in other Raphael. The common thing which matters to large extent is sab admi chor hai. The common man's up there, everybody is a thief. Who is a thief? Who has got power. Common man doesn't have power. If we distinguish that way, that's one of the thing. If you just put your ears, you will hear that. And that's rent seeking. The rent which people collect who are in power is nothing but theft. Has it come down? Despite change of government, despite cleaning up things, this rent seeking is still a problem. A common man's problem is you want to get a loan, you have to pay bribe. You want to get a water connection, you need bribe. You want to do open a shop, want to do some kind of a tidbit service. These are all rent seeking of various forms, both in private sector and public sector. Has it come down? Has anybody made a study? If that is an authoritative study where the rent seeking is shown to have come down, the common man will be helped. And that's not forthcoming. People just, it's out of hat they talk. That we have become better, we have become worse, doesn't really help us in that way. I come to one or two points and then we can discuss
sir,
things.
Please.
Another thing which you will find everyday things is petroleum prices. How the common man is affected? Various ways. Maybe if the price goes up, then public transport may become costlier someday. Maybe the public transport or the transportation used by commercial sector might be costlier. Calculations may vary. Somebody might say it will have a 0.1% effect, somebody might say a 10% effect. Doesn't matter. But let me come to a point which I am talking in some ways or some time. It's my conviction. When you talk about the individuals in Indian society, there is a clear divide. And that clear divide got apparently a lot of support when LPG prices were differentiated. 10 lakhs income or more, you don't get subsidies. Before this came, it's almost like everybody, majority, including the politicians, were dead against. Why should it be like that? It's cooking gas. Then somebody who is, I'm not naming anybody, controlling one of the highest income earners in the world now, gets LPG gas cylinder the same price where the common man, quote unquote, gets that price. It's unthinkable. And when it finally came, everybody admitted it's a good move. It's called differential pricing. And how is it made possible? One of the reasons is digital. If you make things digital, then not only direct benefits can be transferred, this kind of thing is made possible. Then why not differential pricing in case of other petroleum products? If somebody drives 4 cars, he will pay the same petroleum price than somebody who is using a two-wheeler for basic necessities or public transport, same pricing. Does it help the common individual in any way? Remember that drains out our foreign exchange. That puts us in a precarious position. But then everybody talks about why the petroleum prices are so high. But does this affect every individual equally? And if you think about that the government earns so much revenue from this, inelastic revenue earning from petroleum products, if they cut this, then other social sector will be affected. And social sector pays in terms of ballot boxes, all of us know that. But there are some merits to that social sector should get subsidies and support. So I don't find anything wrong in that. Whether there is corruption is a different issue, but there is merit to it, that if you subsidize those who should not get the subsidy, you rob this money from the common. But then you say that it's so high petroleum prices, but not everybody should get that subsidy which the politicians are clamoring for, most of them. Difficult issue. But why then you have the digital world? What will this digital world do if you cannot control this and introduce a differential pricing? I don't understand. I'm not a technical person, but I do believe technology can overcome this problem and can save some of the headache of the budget deficit, social sector spending, that can be taken care of partially though, if we can manage this. I end with one more thing, and that's my last thing for the initial remarks. right now you have heard that people have gone from sectoral subsidies to universal basic income. And there's a lot of support going on that everybody should be given certain amount of minimum income. And the plus point is, if you have a sectoral subsidies, you bind them. Something like at one point of time when the developed countries were giving us aid, it was tied aid, and we do not like it. Tied aid means you tie it. Either you have to buy from their manufacturing companies, or you have to have some kind of tying of this aid. We don't like it. We want untied aid. Similar to this, if you have universal income, you do not tie it. It's the wisdom of the households. You leave it to them. They are the best persons to judge how to spend the money. But then, and this point also came up, it came up in terms of, say, agricultural subsidies which we give, or insurance. It's absolutely a short-term measure, admitting the fact that I cannot create enough stable jobs. Since I cannot create a stable job, I have to depend on this universal basic income. So I can laud it. I can say it's one of the best things to do. I can have 31 different economic theories to justify that, but nobody can deny it's a short-term stopgap measure, and you have to get beyond that. So if this comes and stays, just like in India, is something like it comes with our ethos, something introduced goes on forever. If that is the case, I will be not surprised that we are out for more trouble in future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Since I thought it will be a conversational mode, so let me sit and talk a little bit if it's okay with you. So we have changed as he made some remarks. So let me make some remarks, and then if the time permits, we can it's up to Onam. He has given you, I don't know what else I can add, because as an economist, which I am not, so he has given you the entire perspective and all. So let me try to give you a little different perspective. Policy implementation and common man. And Professor Roy Chaudhary started saying that who is a common man. I had the privilege of working with R.K. Lakshman because I started my career with Times of India. So I know, and then you know his common man sketches. So I don't think there are too many common men in this place, okay? Because in a chamber of commerce, AC room, Lakshman didn't have that many common man. So I presume that it's for the masses, our drivers, our cook, our maid servants, and also beyond that, school teachers, probably government official, government so-called government servant, quote unquote, and of course large the labor force in the organized sector, unorganized sector, partly in the blue collar labor also. So I just tell you, I personally feel that here the politicians, the financial system, and the government, all of them shortchange the common man. Now I'll just give you a few examples. Demonetization, right? I live, thanks to my office, till recently I was living in a relatively better area of Bombay, next to Sachin Tendulkar's house, on the sea in Bandra. It's an old bungalow. I was occupying the 4th floor. My driver, he is from Nepal. His name is Prem. He earns 25,000 from me because he's at beck and call 24 hours. Then he earns another 2,000 from me for taking my dog out in the morning. And he earns 4,000 by washing 5 cars in the morning, early morning. So it's about 31,000 he earns. Very industrious guy, and he is a common man because in Bombay 31,000 is not much of money. Now when the demonetization happened, because I travel a lot, so I used to call Prem at unearthly hour, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock early morning, or 12 o'clock midnight. Just please take my wife, madam ko tum leke jao, because he has to take my wife to some ATM